close your mouth. Pick a note, any note, something low and comfortable that sits near the bottom of your voice. Now hum it. Not loudly, not for an audience, just enough to feel it. Let it run until you are nearly out of air, and while it lasts, pay attention to where the sound actually goes, because it does not stay in your throat and it does not stay in your ears. You can feel it in your lips, in your teeth, in the small bones of your cheeks and the bridge of your nose, a faint buzzing in the front of your face, as if you had set something humming inside the skull itself. Most people make this sound 100 times a year without ever once asking what it is doing. It is doing a great deal. That little buzz you just felt is one of the few things your body lets you do that reaches all at once into 3 completely separate systems that were never supposed to take instructions from you. It calms your heart through a nerve. It floods the hollow spaces behind your face with a gas your own body manufactures, a gas that pharmacists would recognize. And it quiets a particular set of structures deep in the brain. 1 sound, 3 machines. And almost no one has ever told you that the hum you make without thinking is doing any of it. Let me take them one at a time, because none of this is mystical, and all of it is measurable. And by the end, I want to show you something I find genuinely moving. That the grandmother humming a hymn over the dishes, and the yogi sitting cross-legged, making the sound of a bee, and the mother with a baby asleep against her chest, were each, without knowing it, operating the same quiet machinery. They found it long before anyone could measure it. We are only now catching up to what their bodies already knew. Start with the simplest part, the part you may already half remember if you have ever heard me talk about the breath before. A hum is, first of all, an exhale. You cannot hum while you breathe in. The sound only happens on the way out, and it happens slowly, because the narrowed passage of your voice doles the air out in a long, even stream, rather than letting it rush. So before anything exotic happens, a hum is a long, slow breath out. And the long, slow breath out is the single most reliable lever you have on the nerve that slows your heart. That nerve is the vagus, the wandering nerve, the longest of its kind, drifting down from the base of the brain to the throat and the lungs and the heart and the gut. On every exhale, it presses gently on the heart's own pacemaker and tells it to slow down. The longer and slower the exhale, the longer that brake stays pressed. And a hum is an exhale you have stretched out on purpose, sometimes to 15 or 20 seconds, far longer than an ordinary breath. So the very act of humming, before we say one word about vibration or gas, is you leaning on the brake pedal of your own heart and holding it down. If that were all a hum did, it would already be worth the trouble. It is not all a hum does. Now the second thing, the part you can feel in the bones of your face. When you hum, you are not just moving air, you are vibrating. 2 small folds of tissue in your voice box are slapping together and apart over and over, somewhere between roughly 100 and 200 times a second for most adult voices. And that vibration does not stay politely in the throat. It travels. It runs up through the bones of the skull, through the jaw and the cheekbones, into the hollow chambers of the face. This is why a hum feels the way it does, full and buzzing and close, while a spoken word does not. The hum is sound delivered to your own head from the inside, through bone, continuous. The whole front of the skull turned briefly into an instrument. And here is where it stops being only pleasant and starts being plumbing. Because behind your face, you are not solid. Tucked into the bone around your nose and beneath your cheeks and behind your brow are hollow, air-filled pockets called the paranasal sinuses. You know them mostly as the things that ache when you have a cold. But they are not empty, and they are not idle. The lining of those sinuses quietly, constantly, produces a gas. The gas is nitric oxide. Not nitrous oxide, the one at the dentist. Nitric oxide, a small restless molecule, 2 atoms, that your body uses as one of its most important chemical messengers. In ordinary quiet breathing, that gas mostly sits there, pooled in the sinuses, leaking out slowly through the narrow openings that connect each sinus to the nasal passage. A trickle. But those openings, those little necks between the chamber and the open nose, turn the sinus into something an acoustician would recognize at a glance. A hollow box with a narrow opening is a resonator. It is the same shape as the body of a guitar, the same principle as blowing across the mouth of a bottle. And a resonator responds to sound. When you hum, the vibrating column of air does not just buzz in your face for your enjoyment. It shakes the air inside those sinus pockets, hard, hundreds of times a second, and that shaking drives the pooled gas out through the openings and pulls fresh air in over and over, far faster than quiet breathing ever could. In the year 2002, two physiologists at the Karolinska Institute in Stockholm, Weitzberg and Lundberg, decided to actually measure this. They took 10 healthy people and had them breathe out quietly through the nose, while a sensitive instrument measured the nitric oxide leaving them. Then they had the same people hum, just hum, on the out-breath, while the instrument kept reading. The nitric oxide leaving the nose rose roughly 15-fold, not 15%, 15 times. A single, simple, unforced hum increased the amount of this gas venting from the sinuses by a factor of 15 instantly every time. They published it in a respiratory medicine journal under a title with no decoration on it at all. Humming greatly increases nasal nitric oxide. They were right. Sit with that number for a moment, because a 15-fold change in anything inside the human body, produced by something as effortless as humming a few seconds of a tune, is the kind of result that should stop you. Your body has a chamber behind your face that makes a useful gas, and it has handed you a switch that floods the chamber with fresh air and stirs that gas into motion, and the switch is a sound a child makes without being taught. So what is the gas for? This is where I have to be careful, the way honesty asks me to be, because this is exactly the kind of fact that gets stretched into promises it cannot keep. Here is what is solid. Inside the sinuses and the nose, that nitric oxide does real and local work. It helps keep the lining ventilated and clean. It is mildly hostile to bacteria and other unwelcome guests, part of the nose's quiet defense of itself. And it relaxes the smooth muscle in the walls of the small blood vessels right there in the tissue, opening them gently. That much is well established, and it is happening in the front of your skull in the 15 seconds after you hum. And here is the part that connects to something you may not expect, kept honest. That same molecule, nitric oxide, is one of the body's universal signals for telling a blood vessel to relax and widen. When it reaches the muscle in a vessel wall, it switches on an enzyme that produces a second messenger, and that messenger tells the muscle to let go. This is not a fringe idea. It is one of the most important discoveries in modern physiology, and it won a Nobel Prize in 1998. It is also the exact pathway that sildenafil works on. Sildenafil, which most people know by its trade name Viagra, does its job by protecting that very same relaxing signal from being broken down too quickly. So when I tell you that humming releases nitric oxide, I am telling you that humming releases the same molecule that an entire class of medicines was built to imitate. Now the honest break on that, because I would rather you trust me than dazzle you. The nitric oxide your hum releases is short-lived, and it is local. It does its work in the nose and the sinuses where it is made. It is not flooding your bloodstream and opening vessels all over your body. The drama is real, but it is happening in a small place, behind your face, for your breathing and your sinuses. I am not going to tell you that humming is medicine in a bottle, because it is not. and the people who tell you it is have stopped paying attention to what is actually true. What is actually true is remarkable enough. Your nose makes a gas that the pharmacy respects, and a hum sets it loose. Leave it there. It is plenty. So that is 2 of the 3. The hum presses the brake on the heart through the long, slow exhale. The hum floods the sinuses with their own gas through resonance. Now the 3rd, and it is the one that for this audience may matter most, because it happens in the part of you that lies awake at 3 in the morning. When you make a low, sustained tone with your own voice and your mouth closed, something happens in the brain that we can now, just barely, watch. In 2011, a research team in Bangalore led by a scientist named Kalyani put a dozen volunteers into a brain scanner and had them do 2 things in turn. Chant the long sustained syllable Om, a hum that closes finely into that same front-of-the-face buzz, and then make a voiceless hissing sound so that the only real difference between the 2 was the vibration carried into the skull. When the volunteers hummed the Om, particular regions deep in the brain went quiet. The amygdala, the small almond-shaped alarm bell that handles fear and threat, and its neighbors in the limbic system, the brain's old emotional core. They did not light up, they calmed down. I have to say plainly, this was a small pilot study, a dozen people, a first careful look, not the final word. But the researchers noticed something worth passing on. The same deep regions that went quiet during humming are among those that change when doctors treat severe depression with a device that stimulates the vagus nerve directly by a wire. The wandering nerve again. The same nerve that the slow exhale presses on at the heart appears to carry signals upward as well, and a hum may be one of the gentlest ways anyone has found to send a calming message along it without any wire at all. Plausible, not proven, but worth knowing. I'll put the 3 together because the convergence is the whole point, and it is rather beautiful. A single hum, the kind you might make drying a cup or rocking a grandchild, does 3 honest things at the same moment. It stretches the exhale and presses the brake that slows the heart. It shakes loose a 15-fold flood of the body's own vessel relaxing gas into the chambers behind your face. And it sends a vibration into the skull that appears to quiet the brain's alarm bell. 3 systems: the heart, the breath, the deep brain. Reached not by a drug, not by a machine, not by belief, but by a sound you were making before you could speak. And this is the part I promised you. Long before any of this could be measured, people found it. They found it the way people find things, by doing them and noticing that they helped, and passing them down. In the yoga traditions of India, there is a practice with a name that means the bee. It is set down in a text more than 500 years old, and it is exactly this. You close your eyes, you close your ears with your fingertips, so that the only sound left in the world is the one inside your own head, and you hum long and low on every breath out like a bee. They called it the bee breath, the Brahmari, and they prescribed it for a restless mind, for sleeplessness, for the settling of the heart. They had no instrument that could read nitric oxide. They had no scanner that could watch the amygdala go quiet. They had only their own attention, turned inward over centuries, and it was enough to find the switch. And it was not only India. Think of the long-held drone of monks in a stone chapel, the sound that seems to hang in the air after the voices stop. Think of the Sufi breathing the name of God on a single sustained note. Think, most of all, of the ordinary woman, in any country, in any century, humming to herself at the sink, or over the ironing, or beside a cradle in the dark. No one taught her it was good for her heart. No one had to. She hummed because it helped, and it helped because of every mechanism I have just described, whether or not a single person in the room could have named one of them. And the lullaby, This is the one that stops me. When a mother holds an infant against her chest and hums, the baby does not only hear the sound through the air. The baby feels it through the bone and the body, the same way you felt your own hum in your teeth a few minutes ago. That close, full, buzzing, inside delivery of sound. The first comfort most human beings ever receive is a hum carried through the body of someone who loves them. We begin our lives soothed by exactly this, and most of us spend the rest of those lives having forgotten that the tool was ours all along. So come back now to the sound you made at the very start, before any of the explaining began. That low note you held until your breath ran out, the buzz you felt move into your face. You were not passing the time, you were lengthening an exhale and pressing the brake on your own heart. You were shaking a flood of your body's own gas through the hollows behind your eyes. You were sending a soft vibration into the oldest, most frightened part of your brain and asking it gently to be still. You were doing the bee breath of the yogis and the drone of the monks and the lullaby of every mother who ever lived, all in one quiet sound in your own kitchen with no one watching. You do not need to believe any of it for it to work. The nerve does not check. The gas does not ask. The vibration travels through bone, whether or not you understand bone. All that is asked of you is the breath and the closed mouth, and the patience to let one low note run all the way to the end. So hum something later today when no one is listening. Not for any reason you have to explain, just close your mouth and pick a note and let it go and feel it find the front of your face. Something in you has been waiting your whole life for you to remember that you knew how.